Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Densley, and I am in sales and marketing for Customer Dynamics, and I am joined by Dave Espenscheid, our project manager. We'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for taking the time this morning to attend our webinar, Increasing Trade Show ROI using Microsoft CRM with the focus of getting the most out of every lead. As I promised, our goal and focus of the webinar will be to address best practices to get the most out of trade shows, and more importantly, getting the most out of your leads. We'd like to make this webinar more interactive, so we will be sending out an occasional poll so everyone can contribute to the discussion. We would also like to invite you to complete a quick 5-question survey at the end of the webinar. We'll be hosting several webinars throughout the year regarding sales and marketing processes, and would like your feedback so we can make these more beneficial to everyone who attends and to you. So I'd like to share an interesting statistic regarding trade show leads. The blog letstalktradeshows.com provided what I could find as the most recent statistic that over 70% of trade show leads never get followed up on. Some reports even show that up to 80% never get followed up on. However, with the advancement of technology and the increased adoption of CRM, this number is gradually decreasing, but at 70%, it's still too high to dismiss. Now, of course, this percentage depends on your product, the type of show you attend, the demographic of your target market, and so on. So let's be extremely conservative for a moment. What if this 70% contained 1 or 2 potential deals? Consider this too. What is an average sale worth to your company? Is it worth $1,000, $10,000, or more? Would it be worth making an extra follow-up call or two? Of course it would be. In preparing for this webinar, we've spoken to over 200 individuals, with many being in the situation, including some of you, where you've had to cut back on trade show attendance and marketing budgets. We have all felt the strains of a down economy for the last several years, so this means we need to get more for less. We need to get the most out of our trade show attendance and the leads that are generated from these investments. So how much revenue are you missing out on because of this 70%? Please keep this in mind as we progress through this webinar, because I will be touching on it later. And this is the information that has prompted us to address trade show ROI in this, the first of several webinars we are planning to provide. Trade shows can be an important part of your business strategy. So our agenda for today's discussion will include the trade show investment. We'll be discussing the trade show processes, typical and common versus desired, and the best practices. And then we'll jump into a few demonstrations of how to create efficiencies within this process using CRM, and then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. Before jumping into the trade show investment, I'd like to send out a poll regarding the number of trade shows you attend. So on average, how many trade shows do you attend per year? So please take a second and select the option that is most applicable to you and your company. I'm going to give everyone just a second to do that. If you saw our YouTube clip on trade show lead follow-up, we used the example of 3 trade shows costing $15,000 each, with the total investment being $45,000. No matter what the amount is you invest in trade shows, it is usually a large investment. The other thing, you always have to consider the amount of time dedicated to pre-show activities, attending the show, and post-show activities. And then how many people are involved in the process. This investment is much more than just the cost of the show, and this is why it is critical that you are able to calculate the ROI on every show you attend. Now I'd like to get your feedback as well on how much you invest in trade shows. I will now activate the next poll, so please take a second to select which option is most applicable to you. The question is, on average, how much do you invest per trade show? We'll give everyone a few seconds to respond. Great, so it looks like on average with this group in attendance today that the number of trade shows attended per year ranges from 2 to 5. That's where a majority lie. And as far as the average investment per trade show, again, that's also between $2,000 and $5,000, between 2 and 5. So if I do my math right, it looks like the minimum investment for our attendees today ranges from $4,000 all the way up to $25,000 in trade shows. So this represents a large investment, And if you cannot generate a revenue, the money can definitely be used in other areas of the company. So it's critical that you can tie ROI back to the trade shows. Now, let's discuss the trade show process. On one side, we have the typical, pretty common process. Sometimes we're just fortunate enough to reserve our booth space and pay the fee just before the deadline. Other times, we're lucky to just make it to the booth alive. And if we are lucky enough to generate a sale, mission accomplished, right? This type of process is very ineffective and can be very stressful to everyone involved. In my experience, it seems that no matter how prepared I was, something was always forgotten or was missing, whether it was a power cord or something else that I needed. And if this is the process you follow, the chances of forgetting something else increases exponentially. But there is a better process that actually reduces the stress of doing a trade show. Now, best practices include pre-show activities such as research, planning, and marketing. We need to remember that pre-show activities are just as important as your post-show activities. If you plan effectively in the beginning, everything that follows will go much smoother. Once you return from the show, it is important that you import every lead into your system. Make sure every lead is followed up on. Even those people who visited your booth to get the free stuff, they may not be interested, but they'll know who is. Don't be afraid to make them earn that Chotsky or that pen that they took from your booth. It's a give and take relationship. If you're going to give them free stuff, they need to be willing to provide some information, and most usually are. And then tracking and reporting on the progress of trade show leads is also important because it creates a sense of accountability. This way, no leads go by the wayside. And most importantly, this process will help you more accurately determine the ROI on the trade show. Again, trade shows are a huge investment. You have to make sure you're not throwing your money away. Ultimately, the reason to attend a show is to generate revenue and get a return on the investment. So does this look familiar? A pile of business cards on your desk? I think it is fair to say that we've all been here before. So by implementing some of these best practices we've been discussing and improving our processes, the 70% of these leads that typically go to waste will now have the opportunity to contribute to your ROI. I'd like to send out another poll and take another minute to get your responses to this question. I'll go ahead and send that out now. And the question is, are you happy with your current process? There is always room for improvement. So it comes down to, are you satisfied with your process, or is it always a scramble, and do your reps' desks look like this following the trade show? So if this is the image you see after a trade show with a pile of cards on your reps' desks, then I would assume that the answer would be no, that you're not happy with your current process, because there's a much better way to do that, of course. So, okay, it looks like the responses have come in, and this is a good response. It looks like we're actually split down the middle. Our goal, whether you're happy with your current process or not, is to provide you with ideas and processes that will help you improve and create additional efficiencies in your efforts to maximize your leads. For the first portion of the demonstration, I will address the trade show campaign process as well as creating the necessary workflows to follow up on every lead. The campaign and workflow features help you work towards generating the anticipated ROI. Microsoft CRM provides the tools to make the campaign planning and execution easy. So I'll go ahead and jump into that now. Now on this webinar, we have many in attendance who are already familiar with Microsoft CRM, and we also have many who are not. So I'll quickly provide a description of the layout and format of the software. So you may have noticed right off the bat that it's very similar to Outlook. You have the different files and folders on the left side, and then you have your tools in the ribbon up above. So again, it's very similar to Microsoft Outlook and the other Microsoft software products. And what this does for you, it creates a familiar system where everyone is comfortable in using that system. One thing that I was most impressed with when I first came in contact with this product is that this is accessed directly from within Outlook. And the view, the difference there would be your mail folders and files would be just above the workplace and these files here. So again, it creates a single system where your sales teams can execute on their sales activities and push their sales through the process. It's very helpful to keep them within one system. I've been in situations where I've had to jump through several systems, duplicating efforts, and it just basically took a lot of time and wasted a lot of time. So it was refreshing to see that this can be done within one system. Okay, so now that I have explained the layout of Microsoft CRM, we'll jump into the campaigns. And for this webinar, our focus is on trade shows, so we just figured manufacturing trade shows would be the most applicable to this audience. We've chosen to go with the AMCON Design and Contract Manufacturing Expo, the Green Manufacturing Expo, and IMTS, the International Manufacturing Technology Show. And right now I want to take a second to throw out a disclaimer. These are actual trade shows that occur annually, but for the examples we're going to be using and the revenue generated and leads generated from these campaigns and these trade shows is completely fictional. We're just using them for examples, even though these are real trade shows. So there's my disclaimer. I'm good to go. I'm good to move on. So within these campaigns, I'll go ahead and select that and show you how simple it is to set this up. Enter the name of the trade show, select a status and a campaign type, and obviously want to do event, and then you can add any other information you want to in this form. The important things being the begin date and the end date, when you begin planning for the trade show and when you wrap it up. And more importantly, the financial aspect of the trade show. We've entered in the amount allocated towards the budget, and then we have our cost information. So when we're setting up various activities, we can associate a cost to those activities and then add any other miscellaneous costs that occur, and that will give us the total cost of the campaign. So this information is critical when we track the ROI and the revenue that's generated from these campaigns. Now that this campaign has been created, we want to create planning activities and campaign activities. So go ahead and click on that. So a couple of the activities that I have created are the pre-show planning activities and post-show activities, and the actual activities of a follow-up email and phone call. But first I'd like to discuss the pre-show planning. Pre-show activities and planning are just as important as the post-show activities and things you do after the show. And so with pre-show planning, there are several tasks that can actually be broken out into their own task and can be assigned to different users or different owners. So the first step I have in pre-show planning is the research for the show. We want to make sure it's worth attending. So we want to find out all the details that we can. What were attendance numbers for previous years? What's the anticipated attendance this year? What's the location? What time of year will it be? You want to find out this information because that could determine if the show is well attended or poorly attended. Then you want to continue your research in determining the costs. Not only do you have the cost of exhibiting, but you have the accommodations and lodging and travel, food, etc. So once you've researched this information and you've determined that it is worth attending, you'll begin to establish a marketing strategy. Some trade show groups will provide lists, an attendee list that you can market to before the show. And this is valuable because if you're 1 in 100 vendors or 1 in 1,000 vendors, what is going to drive that attendee to your booth? How are they going to know about you? So you want to take advantage of these lists and send them an email, an introductory email, or something letting them know about the drawing that you're having at the trade show. And if these lists aren't provided, because some groups don't provide those kinds of lists, they should be providing other channels to market to these attendees before the show begins. Sometimes they'll have a publication that can go out with an ad or an article from your company. So it's very important that we take advantage of whatever opportunity and channel there is to market before the show to these attendees. Now that we've covered pre-show planning, I want to go into the post-show activities. So it's very important that before the trade show and before your reps leave for the trade show, that a workflow process is in place and established before the leads make it back to the office. Because if there's a gap in this plan, in this process, there's a very good chance that leads will be lost. And so with the post-show activities, we want these established before anyone leaves for the trade show. So we want to make sure we have a lead import process. Who handles that? Who owns that process? And who is responsible for for importing those leads. Next, we want to follow up in a prompt time frame. We want to respond as quickly as possible. So ideally, we want to send out an email as soon as that lead record is created within the system, and also create a follow-up phone call. So these are two key elements and activities that you want to occur at a minimum with your leads once they make it back to the office. That is why I've created activities for the email, for sending the email, and the follow-up phone call. Now this is where the importance of the workflow comes in. If there are 100 leads that come back from the trade show, do you want your salespeople duplicating 100 emails just to change the name of the recipient and the email address? And it takes a lot of time. Our salespeople, we pay them to sell. So it's our job to sell, and we don't want to spend a lot of time creating emails and doing a lot of administrative work. And so what we want to do is set up a workflow where this email is sent automatically once the lead is entered into the system. Second, we want a follow-up phone call created shortly after so we can follow up again in a timely manner so that we can stay top of mind and remain top of mind with these leads. So now I'll go ahead and show you the process of creating that workflow. So I've already gone ahead and created this workflow, but I'd like to show you what I have done and how I did it. So what I have done, I've made it so that every time a lead record is created, an automatic email is sent and a phone call activity is created. So with the email, you have two options. You have the option of just creating a simple message and also using a template where you can include images, your company letterhead or your company logo, which can make it a very formal email, a very professional email. For this webinar, I'm just leaving it as a simple new message. So I'd like to show you how Microsoft CRM helps you in this process. So it allows you to create fields that will automatically be filled in once the lead record is created and this email is created and sent off to your leads. So it allows me to be the owner. It'll throw my name in there. It'll throw the email address of that lead. It will also fill in the first name of that lead, as well as my information and contact information. So once this is done, the next thing we want to do is create a phone call activity. So what I have done with the phone call activity is I have set the call out for 3 days once the lead is created. This way that lead has time to read the email and hopefully respond to that email and provide us the information we're looking for. And if not, you'll have comfort in knowing that every lead will receive a phone call 3 days after from your sales reps. And those 3 days may translate to a week after the trade show. So as long as that contact is within a week, again, our goal is to stay top of mind with these leads. And any information that we've shared with them at the trade show also stays top of mind. So now that this workflow is created, I'll go ahead and close that, and I'll activate this so that once I import the leads, you will be able to see what activities have been executed and which activities have been created as a result of this workflow. So again, with campaigns and workflows, planning is key. I'm sure we're all familiar with this quote from Winston Churchill. He says, "He who fails to plan is planning to fail." So again, the key is planning. Another quote I like is, "Anything that's worth doing is also worth the time and effort spent to establish a workable plan. Plan to succeed and you will." You'll make plans to generate a return on the investment, and you will. Pre-show efforts plus the post-show activities will bring you success and an increase in ROI. For the second portion of the demo, I'd like to walk you through the lead import process. Again, it is critical that every lead is entered into the system and that activities are scheduled to follow up appropriately. Do not lose out on potential ROI because of that elusive 70%. So again, Microsoft CRM, the purpose of CRM, the tools that are provided are to make this process simple and to make everyone's jobs easier. So within the lead form, we have the tool to import the data. Microsoft CRM provides a download template for lead importing. So the nice thing is it's again, it's a template. It's very self-explanatory. You just fill in the basic fields and save it. You want to include all of the information on that individual's business card, as well as any information that was communicated to you or the booth staff at the trade show, because that information could be crucial in moving this lead through the sales process and getting a deal. So I've gone ahead and already filled out an import template. I'll go ahead and import that now and show you how simple this process is. So I'll go ahead and select the file from my desktop. Click Next. Now there are a few fields that I didn't fill in that I feel aren't absolutely necessary, so I'll go ahead and I will ignore those unmapped fields. Click Next, and then I want to submit the data. So once this data is submitted, we'll click Finish. Now once this process and the import has been finished, it'll take a second for the view to refresh and show the new leads that have been entered or imported into the system. The other thing to remember, that while this is taking place, the automatic email is being generated and sent to all of these leads. Now with this import, I've included or added 8 leads, and these leads will be shown here as soon as I refresh the screen and the import is complete. So I'll go ahead and refresh that now. Perfect. As you can see, we went from 3 leads to 11 leads. Now we want to make sure our workflow did what it was supposed to do and sent emails to each one of these new leads, as well as creating a phone call activity. So go ahead and move over to Activities. And before we began this demonstration, we had 4 activities, 2 tasks for the trade shows and 2 activities, the email and the follow-up phone call. Now, if you notice, we have 20 activities. So what has happened, the thank you email, once the lead was imported, has been created and sent, and now is in a completed status. So there are 8 emails sent to every one of the leads. In addition to the 8 email activities that are now visible in the system, are 8 follow-up phone calls. And this follow-up phone call, again, has been scheduled for 3 days out. So this is very important that we maintain a consistent follow-up process and follow up with these leads. No matter what their interest level was, we need to follow up with them as soon as possible so that we can qualify them and move them along in the sales process. So we all know that the objective of a trade show is to generate leads. We also know that it's the responsibility of the sales team to follow up on those leads. It sounds and seems pretty simple, we all know this, but we need to remember that leads are money and we need to do something about them. Remember, if we don't get that money, someone else will. As we've been inviting people to this webinar, many said that because of the niche market they operate within, the same people are at all the trade shows, and so they rarely get new leads. In this situation, it would be my suggestion to treat each individual contact the same as a new lead. They both have a need and may just need help recognizing that need. Obviously, follow-up frequency will be different, but every person, whether they've previously been exposed to your company or they're a new lead, they require some type of nurturing and follow-up. They're spending their money somewhere, and shouldn't it be with you? It would also be important to know at what point or what trade show in particular was the turning point for that lead or that contact. They've attended several trade shows, they've talked with your reps, but it was the same old, same old. Nothing happened, nothing came of those trade shows. But at what point and what trade show in particular did they turn and become a hot lead or an opportunity or where a deal was produced? It'd be very important to track that. Now I'd like to take another minute to send another poll out. And the question with this poll is, in general, how much revenue do you think you're missing out on due to the lack of follow-up? Whether it's 70% of your leads that don't get followed up on, 10%, 100%, whatever the percentage is, how much do you think you're missing out on? Great, it looks like the general response, or majority responded to the range of $1,000 to $5,000. So again, that's missed revenue that we could be capturing if we followed up on our leads. I'll now show you the dashboard and reporting tools provided to help track your trade show ROI. Now, these tools allow you to follow and monitor your leads as they progress through the sales cycle, producing the anticipated revenue. So, nice thing with Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and I know there's other tools out there that provide dashboards, but there are many dashboards that come with Microsoft CRM. And as long as the data is in the CRM, you have multiple views you can access or even create and customize to your preferences and your needs. So for this webinar, I'm going to select on the marketing dashboard. Now this dashboard will play a key role in tracking our ROI on our investment in these trade shows. So real quickly, in this pane we have the campaign budget versus actual costs. We have leads by source, then the revenue generated. So the first pane I want to look into is the campaign budget versus actual cost. Here we see that a budget is allocated of $30,000, so $10,000 per trade show. That's correct. That's what we assigned each trade show. But the next bar, the next column we want to look at is the total cost. And it looks like we came in $1,000 under budget, which is a good thing. But let's see how each individual campaign fared as far as their related costs. So this allowed me to drill down into those results. And we can see that the AmCon Expo was an $8,000 investment. The Green Manufacturing Expo was a $10,000 investment, which is right on budget, which is okay. And then the IMTS show, which was $11,000. So this ended up being $1,000 more, or $1,000 over budget. So this is important information when we look to calculate and determine our ROI and if there was any revenue generated and at what point did we break even. So very important things to consider. As we scroll down, we want to look at the revenue generated by campaign. We can see that the IMTS show generated $11,400 in revenue. Just that quickly we can see that there was a return on that investment. We're $400 past the break-even point. We've exceeded that investment as far as our return is concerned. But a question to ask, it looks like we generated 6 leads from this trade show. So let's see how many of these leads contributed to this revenue, how many potential customers added and helped generate this revenue. So it looks like 1 lead is all that it took to generate a return on this investment. Now with 5 other potential leads in the pipeline, we can definitely exceed this amount and generate a greater ROI. But if we go back, I want to look at the AmCon Expo, it looks like already $4,000, over $4,000 has been generated in revenue. The thing to consider and look at is that there was only 1 lead or 1 opportunity that was generated from this trade show. So that means we closed that deal, which is a good thing, but the bad thing is that we know that there's not any more deals coming out of this trade show. So even though the initial investment was less than the other trade show investments, we barely broke half the investment in revenue. So we fell short of generating a return. So again, this is very critical information when determining whether or not to attend these trade shows in the future and whether or not we generated a return on this investment. So another tool that Microsoft CRM provides are its reporting tools. Throughout these reports, again, these reports come with the software, but it all depends on the data that you have within CRM and that you've entered into the system so that it can be reflected in these reports, and then at that point these reports will become very valuable to you. So the first report I want to look at is the campaign comparison. This will allow me to look at and compare a few different campaigns at a time, which will be very helpful to see them side by side. So here's the report I've created. I've made it so that specific fields jump out at us. So again, the initial investment of AMCON was $8,000. The initial investment of IMTS was $11,000. Here it shows the difference between the actual cost and the budget. We were 20% below budget and 10% over budget in this case. But if we continue on, the estimated opportunity revenue was the $4,250, which became the actual opportunity revenue. And we know that that is the maximum amount that we can generate, or maximum amount of revenue we can generate from this trade show investment. As we look at the IMTS, we see that $11,400 of revenue was generated. But there still remains $4,000 in opportunity revenue. So there is that opportunity that we're going to exceed and generate a greater return on this investment. So again, in comparing the two, whether you're considering to attend them the next year, obviously IMTS, that'll be one of the #1 trade shows we look at. As far as AMCON, we're going to have to consider several other factors to determine whether we're going to continue attending this trade show. So again, the purpose of the dashboards and the different reports is visibility. Visibility is key. We are all familiar with the phrase out of sight, out of mind. If we don't see it, how can we remember to follow up on it or act on it? The goal is to increase trade show ROI, and these tools will help us see where we're at and what needs to be done to achieve this goal. In summary, we have acknowledged the importance of the overall process, from initial planning to the tracking of ROI, how to effectively plan and execute the campaign, while using workflows to effectively import and follow up on these leads. We also showed the importance of having dashboards and the ability to generate reports to increase the overall visibility of the process. Remember, everything is based on ROI. In order to increase trade show ROI, we need to improve the efficiency of our planning and our execution. And once we're able to do this effectively, we will know that we're getting the most out of our leads. This concludes our webinar, How to Increase Trade Show ROI Using Microsoft CRM and Getting the Most Out of Every Lead. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to take them at this point. It looks like we have had a question come in, and the question is, how can I make sure my teams follow up on every lead? Now, that's a great question. You invest in these systems and these processes and make sure everything's planned out and everyone's on the same page, but it's still hard to make people do what they don't want to do or that they're not accustomed to doing. So another interesting statistic that I have is that 67% to 71% of these kinds of projects fail. And one of the biggest factors is user adoption. The first step is to get these people involved in the process by asking for their feedback and then actually doing something about it. The second step is that they have to know why and how this tool will help them. The answer is the same for both the business and the user. It all comes down to ROI. The sales team, the salespeople, they need to make their commission, and the company needs to generate their revenue. So the other thing too that will help is something we mentioned earlier in the webinar. Through the reporting process, there is accountability. It's the sales team's job to sell, and in other words, it's their job to follow up on leads they're given. The company invests in these leads, which help the sales team produce more sales. So the company is investing in them, and now it's their job to convert those leads and track those leads. And it doesn't hurt to have a system that's easy to use. Remember, everything is based on ROI. If your tools cannot help you accomplish this, you need to invest in the tools that will. You need the right tools to help you plan, and just as important, you need the tools to help you execute on those plans. If we can help you in any of these areas, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you for attending this webinar. Here's my contact information. Please contact me with any questions you may have from today, and if you have questions on how Microsoft CRM can help you. At this time, we'd like to ask for your help and feedback regarding today's webinar. As soon as we exit the webinar, you'll be shown the survey. So please take a second to complete the survey. And thank you again for your time.